It is important to recognize these dynamics so that when the viciousness begins to occur, as it invariably will, we will understand why. It does not happen because we are poor students of A Course in Miracles, but because we are fearful ones. And we are hardly alone in this. Our fear intensifies when we begin to take this course seriously and realize that Jesus is not addressing the persons we think we are, bodies reading his words. Why would he talk to bodies he tells us are nothing while reminding us that mind is everything? He is speaking to the mind's decision maker that chose wrongly and then forgot to make the choice. When we become aware of our decision-making power, the fear grows, and a little voice whispers, "If you keep this up, God will destroy you, hurling you into the oblivion where you will disappear into nothingness." That is when the ego brings out its heavy artillery to defend its existence and protect it from incursions on its territory of separation and specialness. If you choose to see yourself as unloving, you will not be happy. You are condemning yourself and must therefore regard yourself as inadequate. Would you look to the ego to help you escape from a sense of inadequacy it has produced and must maintain for its existence? Can you escape from its evaluation of you by using its methods for keeping this picture intact? We have been asking the ego for help all along, which means we have relied on our own background and experience to help us understand what is happening now. The ego's use of the past to understand the present is a major theme of A Course in Miracles, to be discussed in subsequent chapters. However, since the Holy Spirit does not live in the past, and the ego does not live in the present, by looking toward the past, we ensure we will never understand his perspective on what is going on now. The categories the ego offers to make sense of current circumstances, I don't know what happened there, may be understandable to us, but they are insane. However, it is what we do not understand that is sane, but that is not what we call upon. Jesus, therefore, helps us break down our reliance on the ego, especially since we do not even know we are dependent on its defenses of specialness. A Course in Miracles presents so radical a thought system that as we continue to practice it, we find that nothing in the world has taught us works. Nor does this course work in the world. That is why forgiveness is a long process and why we speak of the text as a symphony in 31 movements with recurring themes. We need to hear the same music over and over until we are able to integrate its message. Despite the compelling nature of Jesus' words and our desire to return home, we are so fearful of losing our ego that it seems easier to bring truth to illusion rather than illusion to truth. Undoing this fear can only occur over time, facilitated by Jesus' infinite patience. You cannot evaluate an insane belief system from within it. Its range precludes this. You can only go beyond it. Look back from a point where sanity exists and see the contrast. Only by this contrast can insanity be judged as insane. Jesus clearly speaks here of the decision maker. On the chart, let's move to that. So Jesus clearly speaks here of the decision maker. On the chart, just below the solid line on the left, Note the terms Son of God, decision maker, dreamer, observer. When God's Son chooses to return to his decision-making mind, he becomes a right-minded observer, looking with Jesus at the insanity of the ego thought system. We cannot understand this insanity from within the system, and as we will see below, this was the error of psychoanalysis. Freud knew the insanity of the ego, what he termed the psyche, but he understood it only within the ego itself, which is why he saw no way to escape it. Yet there is hope of escape, a freedom that rests on our ability to move beyond the ego, described in the text as the process of rising above the battleground. We rise above the world and wrong mind, truly one and the same, since ideas leave not their source. So we rise above the world and the wrong mind, which are the same, and observe the ego's dreams of separation and death with which we have chosen to identify. The chapters to follow will speak of how the miracle brings us to the choice point in the mind where we can look at both dreams, the ego's nightmares of specialness and the Holy Spirit's happy dream of atonement, and see the contrast. Then and only then can we make a meaningful choice and judge insanity to be insane. This means that we recognize the source of our madness and understand why we persisted in choosing separation over unity, form over content. The above passage is an early mention of the importance of stepping back from the ego and looking at it with the Holy Spirit, the only way out of the impossible situation of living in the world. There can be no hope when we remain within insanity, being forced to adjust to it. For example, waging war is as mad as any of the problems we think that waging war is supposed to solve. As war is an insane reaction to an insane behavior that comes from an insane thought that leads to insane behaviors and reactions. The ego's madness simply goes around and around, insanity breeding insanity. Governments function this way because individuals do, for the ego is that insane thought system of separation and attack. Once again, our only hope for liberation from this prison house of pain is to step outside the system. This is the purpose of developing a relationship with Jesus. His loving, sane presence in our minds, with which we join, allows us to look at the darkness of the ego's madness and smile, instead of looking with judgment and fear and fleeing into further insanity.